solve this equation by doing something called completing the square, okay? You have x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 25, okay? If I brought 25 over, okay, I would have minus, 9? 16 minus 25? Okay, I would have minus 9. But that's not factorable, x squared minus 8x minus 9. Because I would need something that factors to give me negative 9 and adds to give me negative 8, not factorable, okay? So we're gonna leave it in this form. What do you notice about x squared, about 16, and about 25? What do you notice about those three things? Yeah, say it, Jackie. They're all perfect squares. 25 is a perfect square, 16 is a perfect square, and x squared is a perfect square. And in fact, x squared minus 8x plus 16 is a special type of perfect square, a perfect square trinomial. So how would I factor a perfect square trinomial? I would change it to say what? X minus 4 squared. Okay, can I solve from here now? Yep, you take the square root of both sides, yes? If I take the square root of both sides, then I get x minus 4 equals what?
5.
Not 5. How many answers do you have when you take a square root?
Oh, positive.
Okay, and there's a reason why I say not 5. There's a reason why the answer is plus or minus 5. Because when I add 4 to both sides to finish this, okay, you have to do positive 5 plus 4, which is 9. And you have to do negative 5 plus 4, which is negative 1. You have 2 possible answers. Do you see what I'm saying? That is why you have to put plus or minus 5, because there are 2 answers there, not 1. Okay? And it makes a difference, because when I'm adding something else to it, it makes a big difference. So I have my solutions are 4 plus 5, which is 9, and 4 minus 5, which is negative 1. Okay? That's how I'm going to solve this right here. Okay? That's as far as it wants me to take this so far. So to solve that, I have to recognize, first off, that it is a perfect square trinomial. And then I am squaring both sides to complete what's going on. Okay? That's one of the easier ones. Now, perfect squares. So in the first example, right, the trinomial x squared minus 8x plus 16 is a perfect square because it equals x minus 4 squared. Sometimes you need to add a term to an expression, x squared plus bx, to make it a square. That is called completing the square. So when I add something to it to complete it, okay? Like if there is nothing on the end, if it just said x squared minus 8x, I would need to complete that by completing the square, okay? To complete the square, this is what you do. You take that b. So once again, if it just said x squared minus 8x, this is the b always, yes? You take the b, you divide it by 2, and you square it. So if I take negative 8 and divide it by 2, I get negative 4, and if I square that, I get 16, okay? And I would add it to this side of the equation, and I would add it to the other side of the equation if there's 2 sides. If there's just one side, I'm just completing the square and telling you what that is. That's called completing the square when you do that, okay? Now, we're going to start by the first one up there. Says find the value of c that makes x squared plus 16x plus c a perfect square trinomial. So if I have x squared plus 16x plus c, what is c in this case to make it a perfect square trinomial? What do I need to do? You need to do what? Yep, 16 divided by 2, which is 8, and then square it and you get, so 64 is c, okay? So 64 equals c is my constant in this case. So my equation would say x squared plus 16x plus 64. I've now created a perfect square trinomial. On your homework, you're going to have several of those where it says, tell me what c is in this if I were to make a perfect square trinomial. Okay? That should be the easiest part of this. Then you get equations that say this. X squared minus 12x plus 4 equals 0. Is there any way to multiply to get 4 and add to get negative 12? No, not even possible, yes? Okay, so we're gonna do something called completing the square on this. In order to complete the square, we've got to move that 4 to the other side. Okay, so that it says x squared minus 12x plus something equals negative 4 plus something. Okay, I'm moving it so that I can complete the square so that I can solve for x in the long run. Now, how do you complete the square? What do? Negative 12 over 2, which is negative 6, and then you square it, which is, okay, I put the 36 there and I put it here. Whatever I add to one side, I have to add to the other side. Okay, so the perfect square, when I'm completing it, gets added to both sides of the equation. Okay, factor this for me now. How does x squared minus 12x plus 36 factor? X minus 6. So I have x minus 6 squared equals, what's 36 minus 4? 32. Now, to solve from here, I'm taking the square root of both sides. And I get x minus 6 equals, is there a square root of 32? No, but can 32 break down? Factor trees, people. 8 and 4. 8 is 2 and 4. 4 is 2 and 2. 2 and 2, right? There's one group, there's two groups, so 4 radical 2. And how many solutions do you have when you're taking the square root? 2. So you have plus or minus 4 radical 2. So then my solution comes out to say x equals 6 plus or minus 4 radical 2. So I would accept that as an answer. Your book is probably going to take it a step further and do 6 plus 4 radical 2 and then do 6 minus 4 radical 2. So you would get decimal answers. Yes, you're going to get lots of decimal answers. Okay? This is completing the square. It takes time. It's not super hard. Okay, solve 2x squared plus 8x plus 14 by completing the square. What do you think I need to do first? What do you think I should do first on that?
Move it 14 to the other side.
Do what, Elle? You're on the right track too. But let's factor out a 2, because all of that's divisible by 2, yes? So if I divide everything by 2, I get x squared plus 4x plus 7. Now, Eddie, tell me what to do. Move the 7 to the other side. Good. So I get x squared plus 4x. I always leave a blank here so that I remember I'm adding something to it. Equals negative 7, and I always leave a blank on that side too so I don't forget to add it to the other side. Now from there, what do I have to do to solve from here? What do I need to do from here, Jackie? Yeah, what's that called?
Completing the square.
Okay, so completing the square. So I take what and divide it by 2? What number? What's my b? It always goes A, B, C. What's my b? 4. So I take 4, I divide it by 2, and I square that answer and you get 4. So I plug a 4 in here, I plug a 4 in here. Now, you put that into perfect square trinomial form. So what is it? X plus 2 squared equals, what's negative 7 plus 4? Negative 3. Ooh, okay. Now what do I do from here? Great. Take the square root and I get x plus 2 equals what? Plus or minus, I can't have a negative radical. Yep. Plus or minus I radical 3. Now I subtract 2 from both sides, right? And you get x equals negative 2 plus or minus I radical 3. The I is because that negative is inside of here. If you have a negative in a radical, it becomes an I on the outside. The imaginary numbers, okay? So I can have imaginary answers also, but remember I still have two, plus or minus I radical 3 or whatever it is, okay? Now, the next one says, the area of the rectangle shown is 72 square units. What's the value of x? How can I solve that? How do you find the area of a rectangle? Length times width, and the area is what? So what do you think I'm gonna set up? An equation, what's my length? 3x, what's my width?
X plus 3.
So 3x times x plus 2 equals 72. Okay, great. Now from there, what do you think I need to do to solve this? Distribute that 3. If I distribute that 3, I get
3x squared.
and plus 6x equals 72. Look at what's missing. What's missing?
C.
Your c. So you're going to do what, you think?
Completing
Complete the square. Yeah, complete the square to solve it. Because if I subtract 72 back over, correct? Can I factor 72? So something that multiplies to give me 72 and adds to give me 6? No. But I can do something with all these numbers before I complete the square. What could I do? Factor out of 3. If I factor out of 3, then I end up getting x squared plus 2x plus something, right? What's 72 divided by 3? 24? 24? Yep, 24. So then I say 24 plus something. Now, take 2, right? And you're dividing it by,
2.
which gives you,
1.
and that squared is,
1.
see, it just makes easier numbers to work with. Now, what's this look like when I do the trinomial? X
Plus 1.
plus 1 squared equals 25, yeah? Take the square root. What's the square root of 25?
Negative. Positive 5.
Yep, positive and negative 5. And then I'm subtracting 1, right? So I get x equals, if I do positive 5 minus 1, I get positive 4. And if I do negative 5 and negative 1, I get negative 6. Now, one of these answers works here, and one does not because we're dealing with what type of stuff right now? Measurement. So what answer would work? 4. I can't have negative measurement. Okay, so in this case, my answer is just x equals 4. You gotta use some common sense there. Okay? Be smart. I know you can. Let's do a couple more. Okay? Now, this says y equals x squared minus 10x plus 22. Okay, in vertex form, right? Y equals x squared minus 10x plus 22 in vertex form. Then identify the vertex. What is vertex form? This all ties in together. What is vertex form?
These figures you can factor that.
What?
You can factor that.
You can factor which one?
That 3x plus 6x, 3x squared plus 6x minus 7.
Okay, it just makes it easier if I do it this way. Because we factored out.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, what is vertex form? What does that look like? Kind of, what do you mean by that? It's like y equals, and it's always a, vertex form is,
Y equals ax plus b.
Nope.
Y equals ax.
no, ax plus bx plus c is
That's
standard
direct
form.
derivation.
That's standard form. Ax plus bx plus c is standard form. Vertex form is y equals a, x minus h squared plus k. Vertex form. Listen, you better know standard, vertex, and, what's the other form we have? Intercept. You better keep those familiar. They are not going away this year. You need to have them memorized. So vertex form has that squared in, okay? So how do you think we're gonna change that standard form of y equals x squared minus 10x plus 22 into vertex form? With what we've been talking about today, what do you think you're gonna do? complete the square. Because when I complete the square, I get something that has a squared right here, yes? Always. So if I can complete the square in this form, then I can work from there, yes? Okay? So, here's the deal. We have the form y equals x squared minus 10x plus 22. Now here's the deal. I can't get rid of y, right, because it's like part of an equation. So I'm going to have y plus or minus something equals x squared minus 10x, right? And then the question is, what do I do with that 22? Okay. What do I do with that 22? Here's what I suggest that you do. Okay. This is going to be plus. You want to complete the square, so you want to say plus something. Okay? And I'm just going to move this 22 out here, because here's the deal. If I move it over here, I have to eventually move it back over, right? So it's pointless to move it twice. Just get it out of the way and we'll add it into our answer. Okay? So to complete the square, I have to take this negative 10, and what do I have to do to it? Divide by 2, which gives me negative 5, and I square that and you get, okay? So I put 25 here, I put 25 here, yes? Okay? So now I have y plus 25 equals, how does this factor? If it's a perfect square trinomial, what does it say? X minus 5 squared plus 22. What am I going to do with this 25? Move it over. And then you get y equals x minus 5 squared minus 3. Boom. That's in vertex form. Okay, that's in vertex form. It's much easier than like trying to FOIL it and then factor it back out to be in vertex form, okay? So keep it that way, keep it simple. Like I said, just take that 22, move it out of the way, because if I did subtract over here, then I've just got to add it back over. Dumb. Okay. One more. I think I have one more, yes. The height, y in feet of a baseball, t seconds after it is hit, is given by the function y equals negative 16t squared plus 96t plus 3. Find the maximum height of the baseball. Maximum height of a baseball being hit, what type of shape does a baseball being hit make? A parabola. And maximum height would go with what part of a parabola? Vertex. So what form do you want this in? Vertex form. So what do you think we're going to do? Yep, but what can 3 go into 16 and 96? I'm just asking, I have no idea. No? Okay, so we can't start there. So what are we going to do first? Okay, when we've done completing the square, I have a question for you. When we have done completing the square, what has always been our leading coefficient? X squared, just a 1 in front of it, right? Our leading coefficient. Does that have a leading coefficient of 1 right now? No, okay? So that means we've got to take care of that as well. And here's how you take care of something when it's not a leading coefficient of 1. Okay? We're going to say y plus something, again, like we've been doing. You having fun there, Kaden? Okay. Y plus something, okay? But this something is going to be times by whatever it is. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that negative 16 and we're going to bring it outside here. But I'm also going to bring it over here. Okay? Because I want that negative 16 out of the way so that I can factor this. And you have t squared plus 96t, right? Plus something. And what are you going to do with that 3? Move it to the side, right? So I'm going to say t squared minus, what is 96 divided by 16? I think 16 goes into 96. 6, yes. So when I factor out that 16, that negative 16, that changes this sign to a negative and it gives me 6t plus something, and then that 3 is out here, yes? Which means the 3, no, that's not the 3. The 3 is out there. Okay? So now I'm completing the square. What's half of negative 6? Negative 3. And what's negative 3 squared? So 9 goes here, 9 goes here. Okay, so over here I have y plus, what's negative 16 times 9? Negative 144 equals negative 16 times, and how do I put this in the perfect square trinomial form? T minus 3 squared plus 3. Now I'm gonna add 144 to this side, right? And I'm gonna get y equals negative 16 t minus 3 squared plus 147. So what is my maximum height of that baseball? You should be able to tell me from right there. Because what's your vertex?
Negative 3, or no, positive 3.
147.
So what's my maximum height? Yeah, 147 feet. So your baseball was hit 147 feet into the air at the highest point. Okay, so we're tying everything from this chapter in together at this point. Yes, I know, you're thrilled, exciting. Okay, so completing the square, that's what we're gonna work on tonight, and we'll probably work on it tomorrow as well.